Hey guys, I wanted to make a short video about guitar setup, maybe some tips and tricks, some advice, my advice, things like that. So first, just want to continue to give all you subscribers and people who comment a big thank you. We really appreciate that. It kind of makes my day to read comments and see that you guys like the videos we post. Really appreciate that. So in one of the last couple videos, I think it was when I was changing strings, on not my guitar, one that looked just like this, my uncle's guitar, I talked about how this one was in the shop. So I've had it back for a while and I just kind of wanted to do a short video about that. So I took this guitar to Southeast Guitar Repair in Buford, Georgia, about 2 hours from here, about 45 minutes or so from Atlanta if traffic's not too bad. I'm going to put a link down below to their website so you can find their information if that's something you're interested in. If you live locally, I'm really happy with the work they did. So for me, they did kind of a regular setup. They did a couple things. So they did a regular setup. We'll get into that in a second. And then they put, it's kind of hard to see, but they put strap locks here for me. And then they also changed the saddle and the nut, and they hand carved those out of bone. So also they just gave it a really good cleaning, polished the frets. So I am pretty pleased. I've played guitar for maybe since I was about 12, 13 to maybe 11 or 12 years or so. And I'll be honest, I've never had this guitar set up. This is not the one I started on, but I've played it for most of that time and just didn't really actually know that a setup was a thing. I thought if I change the strings, kind of rub it down while, after I change them, it's probably fine. And in some cases, that's not the worst thing, but at the same time, guitars are just like cars. The oil's got to be changed, the tires have to be rotated, it's the same thing. So if you take it for a setup, kind of a basic setup would be, they're going to look at the nut and the saddle, they're going to look at the truss rod, which in this guitar, and most guitars have it, they have a truss rod running through the neck, and then this part right here, this little plate, is the truss rod plate. And if you were to take that off, you would see the side of the rod, and in some you can turn it upside down, or not upside down, but flip it up and you can see the truss rod in there. So these are just basic things. They'll get the pegs, they look at all of it. And over time, if you play a lot, like I do, you travel, even if you're not traveling that far, but you're putting it in the case and out of the case, in the car, out of the car, it's cold, it's hot, it's this, it's that, even if it's not extreme temperature changes or anything like that, things can kind of just ever so slightly wiggle out of place, things like that, and then that affects your sound. It affects your sound hugely. So if you're getting to a point where you're like, man, this guitar really don't sound like it used to, and I was kind of getting to that point, it's probably time for a setup. And I think people recommend it if you play a lot, having that done, like, I think every year. And like I said, I've had this guitar probably since I was 14 or 15, so that's about 10 years. So I'd never had that done. Kind of felt bad after I realized, oh, I should have this done, but better late than never. So like I said, they clean the frets, and you don't realize how dirty the fretboard really gets, even if you wash your hands every time before you play like I try to do. There'll just be lots of oil, dead skin, gunk, whatever. And what they can do, since and that's another thing I recommend, you can do some of this at home, and if you want to, you can, but if you have any qualms about it, take it to a luthier. They have the skills, they have the years of experience. Don't mess around and break your instrument. That was kind of my thing. I was like, well, I had actually ordered, I should tell you that, the nut up here, the groove was really deep on the E string and it buzzed. I had a piece of paper in there. I had that in there for like a year. Just a cheap trick. Shouldn't do it. I just needed it replaced. I ordered one from Taylor because that's what this guitar is, and then thought I'll just replace it myself. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, that's probably not a good idea, and probably wasn't. I mean, maybe I could have done it. Maybe it, would have went off with no problems. But I'm really pleased with this one because they're bone, and that's just kind of an upgrade, right? It's a better material. It has a nicer sound. I would say it's maybe a little bit more mellow, but nothing too serious. Still has a nice sound. And two, the action, that's a big thing when we talk about guitars. We talk about action, and that all of this, the truss rod, the saddle, the nut, all of this affects your action. So if the action is really high, the string's set really high off the fretboard, it's not comfortable to play at all. I can't stand it. I'm, I guess, somewhat wimpy. I want a little action. It's just easier to play. And I think after having these changed, the action is actually a tiny bit lower, which surprised me. That was the first thing I noticed was, whoa, this action doesn't feel the same. Not a bad change. I like it. I will say you have to be a little bit careful. If you do a lot of slides, a lot of bends, a lot of tuning that's not standard, you know, you don't want it to set, there is a such thing as it setting too close because you don't want it to buzz. If it sets too close and you're kind of playing really hard, it can buzz. That's not really that big of a problem for me. I'm not like, you know, banging this thing. So not too worried about that. They also, these are so clean. It's unreal. I looked at them and I'm like, are those new? I didn't know they were that dirty. Also strap locks, these things. So strap locks, I'll do a zoom in here so you guys can actually see it better. So strap locks, I have dropped this guitar twice from having a strap that wasn't very good. So most straps just kind of have like a big slit. They might be a couple inches and then you just fit it here and you fit it here. Well, it still has like 2 or 3 inches to where it can fall out, and that's exactly what it did. I caught it, but first time wasn't as bad. It was on cover, but the next time before I caught it, the headstock kind of dived and hit the ground, and that's really bad. You don't want that. You can tear up your instruments. So strap locks, again, I'll do a close-up so you guys can see. So strap locks, they install this part right here, but then they actually, another part locks over it, and that goes on the strap, that stays on the strap, and it's a little button. And so when you go to put the strap on, you just push that button and it literally locks into that. And if you try to jerk it off, you can't. So you would never have to worry about, am I holding this, am I going to drop it? I worried a lot about that before I got a better strap because I did drop it. So I'm overall really pleased with them. They were just really nice, and you know, I took it in and they opened the case and they looked at it and they really talked to me and said, well, what do you want? What are your concerns? So it wasn't just like, oh yeah, we got it. I felt like they really listened. So I was really pleased with that. In the area where we live in Western North Carolina, there's not really a service like that nearby. You know, 2 hours is not super far, but it's not like there's someone, for the most part, really right down the road that we can go to. So I would suggest for sure having them set up at least, I mean, if you play a lot like us, you probably need it like at least once a year, but definitely once every couple years, making sure that everything is set right, especially if you're not pleased, if you're feeling like, this doesn't sound like it used to, doesn't sound like I wish I would want it to. It may be that. Maybe that you need a setup. So also, let's talk a little bit before we end this about picks and strings. That makes a huge difference on your playing. If you're not pleased, if you're stuck in a rut, if you want something different, different sound, try a different pick and different strings. So for me, I like to play with a somewhat thicker pick. This one is 2 millimeters. It's what's called Big Stubby. I really like those. I cannot stand a flimsy pick. If it's flimsy, I feel like I can hear the noise of it slapping the strings. I don't like that. It doesn't feel substantial. It doesn't feel like I feel like I miss notes if it's really thin, but you may like that, and if you do, that's cool too. So experiment with those. They're definitely also made out of different material, different plastics, celluloid. Can't think of any other ones off the top of my head, but also strings. For me, I've really only ever played with Diodario. Hope I'm saying that right. That's how I say it. Strings, because I feel like they're just a good quality string, and then you can pull the sound out that you want. I played with Martin strings one time. I'll be honest, I hated them. Just my opinion, I hated them. They were bitey, chompy. It's like they never wore in. I had a pair of Earthwood strings one time. I didn't like those. So I play with medium gauge, and that's another thing, gauge. That can really affect the sound. So this is what I would say, this is like a light guitar made out of light wood. It's spruce. It's not made out of maple. It's not made out of something that's super hard. So putting light gauge strings on it, while they're easier on your fingers, they're not going to give you, you know, a nice louder sound. So that is also something to consider. What else? Also, you know, just before we end this, a few tips, you know, things that have helped me along the way is whenever you're playing, whether you're really advanced, intermediate, just starting, somewhere in between, just have fun. And I know people say that all the time, and it's kind of wore out, but it really doesn't matter what you're doing if you're not having fun. If it's not fun, I find myself doing this. Sometimes I'll be learning a song and I'll get so frustrated because I can't play it, and then I'll remind myself, this is just supposed to be fun. chip away at it, do what you can, and if you can't get it then, move on. Come back to it and you'll probably get it. But it's just meant to be fun. Don't set super crazy expectations, especially if you're a beginner or even if you're trying to. So for me, I've mostly just done rhythm, and I'm a really good rhythm player, but I'm trying to learn melody. And if you follow along with this, you'll probably see recently I got a Les Paul, an electric guitar, and it's so different. And sometimes I get so frustrated. I think, well, I've played guitar for years. I should just be able to sit down and play whatever I want, and that's not necessarily true. So be easy with yourself. Set kind of reasonable goals. Don't get too frustrated. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you have any questions, any comments, please drop them below. Would love to help you out if you're you know, trying to decide, you know, where to get your guitar set up or just anything like that. I would highly recommend these people. I think they were great. You can find them on Instagram, so I'll also try to leave that below. Funny kind of thing about that is on Instagram they always do stories, and they'll walk around in the shop. It's just like the front desk, and then everybody has their station where they're working on guitars. And they did stories, and the receptionist, I want to say her name's Mindy, but I might have that wrong. But she was walking around and asking the boys what they were working on. And in one of the videos, I seen this guitar, and that was pretty funny. I was like, oh, okay, that's mine. So really nice people. I'll drop that below. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any questions. Just enjoy playing, and we'll see you at the next video.